Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good evening for you there back at home. Welcome to Live Real Talk right here on Horizon TV. My name is Faisal, Kassim, and tonight we are talking about yet another topic that you are very much interested on. We have mentioned it, we have spoken about it before right here on Live Real Talk, of course as requested by you. And of course it is something that it is affecting humanity. It is not just about religion, over and above being our brothers and sisters down there in Palestine. It is something to do with humanity. One of the activists once said, you don't need to be a Muslim for you to see what's wrong in the apartheid that's ongoing in. You just need to be human. And tonight I'm joined by one amazing lady who has been on the forefront on the war on freeing Palestine and ending the apartheid that's ongoing there, courtesy of the Israeli government, and that's none other than Miss Maren Mantovani. Very good evening to you, madam.
Thank you. Happy to be
Thank you so much for making time for us this evening.
Thank you.
Karibu sana to Osides. Miss Maren Mantovani, straight into it. You are on a 5-day tour, visit rather, in this country. Would you mind, just for the benefit of our viewers, maybe, what exactly is your purpose of the visit in this country?
My visit to Kenya actually is in a broad framework of a visit to Africa as such. Mm-hmm. And it is really the idea to strengthen the ties and strengthen the action of solidarity between the African people and the Palestinian people. There has been historically a strong tie from the anti-colonial struggles in Africa that perfectly understood that what was happening in Palestine and what the Palestinian struggle is, nothing more, nothing less than their own anti-colonial struggle as well. Mm-hmm. And today it's time to re-strengthen, refreshen and revive these relations.
How are you planning to do that, madam?
We're working on various levels, and here in Kenya in particular I'm meeting with Kenyans for Palestine, the solidarity group here, but as well with parliamentarians, with civil society groups, and with others in order to build connection and discuss how we can shift the perception of what is happening in Palestine.
Of course, you're doing this as your capacity as an official within the BNC Palestine, right? That is BDS National Committee, correct?
Yes, and the BDS movement is by now this global movement, and I guess one of the most powerful movements at the moment within the world. It was launched in 2005 by a unified Palestinian call for BDS, Boycott, yes. Divestment and Sanctions. Yeah. All political and social forces in Palestine joined, no matter what they may think on other things, on one basic principle, that boycotts, divestment and sanctions are the fundamental tool to put pressure on Israel to hold it accountable for its crimes against the Palestinian people, for its apartheid system, its occupation and colonialism. That call evidently was deeply inspired once again by the African struggle against apartheid in South Africa and in Africa in general, because their boycotts, divestments and sanctions have actually brought to the overthrow of the apartheid regime in South Africa.
Interesting that you've mentioned about the African. Before we delve deeper into the formation of the BDS movement in 2005, and of course you had at least 170 Palestinian organizations endorsing you before the end of 2005, and then you went ahead and organized a conference 2 years later, the year 2007, a very large conference, of course, that you had more endorsements within the peninsula, correct? So before you mention that, in your relation to try and reconnect between the African people and the Palestinian struggle, how do you integrate that with the recent admission of the Israeli government as an observer in the African Union?
In fact, in Palestine, we were shocked, and the good news is that it wasn't only in Palestine that we were shocked. In many African capitals, it was shocking to see that the chairman of the African Union, in a completely unilateral anti-democratic move, has accepted the request of Israel to become an observer at the African Union. But Israel had already asked for that observer
exactly,
status
they asked
time
for that,
ago.
and it was being discussed. So can you confirm and substantiate that it was a unilateral decision by the chairman of the African Union?
It was requested, it was discussed, it was
Yes.
rejected. And at this point, nothing has changed in Israel's behavior since then. On the contrary, its apartheid regime has become ever more cruel. There is no reason for a chairman to take that unilateral decision.
Was it unilateral though?
Absolutely. Nobody in the capitals of the African Union was consulted.
And you can substantiate that? You can take you on record for saying that that was a unilateral decision?
Absolutely. You go and read the press releases of the South African Foreign Ministry that clearly said, we haven't been consulted, nobody has been consulted. In fact, the entire SADC bloc has sent an official complaints letter to the chairman and to the Commission of the African Union. Arab states have sent a complaints letter jointly on that issue. And various other states have gone on record and spoken out individually as well to reinforce that point, that there is no consensus on Israel's status as an observer state. And when there is no consensus, the African Union has held itself together and has been effective because of the very fundamental principle of deciding on consensus.
Ms. Maren Mantovani, but there are statutes guiding the African Union. So instead of going to the press, that is the South African government, and the other governments, including Morocco and Tunisia, and all those who came out protesting, there are statutes guiding the African Union. Do you think they would have taken a better move, they would have made a better move complaining within the system, rather than coming out here on media to complain on the media?
There are two ways of working.
Yes.
The governments have complained within the systems and will bring it on the 13th and 14th and 15th of October, to the Executive Council of the African Union. But I think it is the obligation of the people to speak their word and speak their word to their governments so that they are represented in the way they want it. And it has been impressive in my tour through Africa that I found hardly anybody that would actually support the fact that the African Union wants to invite an apartheid on the table.
As an observer. Perfect. As BDS, the lead advocacy group or platform or movement for that matter that is pushing for the end of the apartheid regime in Palestine, what have you done on this move? Have you written to the African Union? Have you raised your complaints? Have you met the call? Have you lobbied? What exactly have you done?
We have as well written to the African Union and to all member states, but we have worked together as well with our allies and friends and comrades, both within and outside the governments, in order to raise awareness why it is wrong, why it is fundamentally wrong to give Israel a privilege and a present, a reward for its apartheid regime and its occupation on the Palestinian people, and to help pushing governments to continue to take a stand in solidarity with Palestine. Because what we're really asking for from Palestine, what the Palestinian people is hoping for, is not a change of opinion, is a continuity of the support from Africa for the Palestinian people.
Great.
And in that sense, I hope as well that the Kenyan government will be in line with this historic solidarity with Palestine and against colonial regimes.
His Excellency Hazem M. Shabbat is on record on Horizon TV to have actually thanked the Kenyan government to stand with the Palestine through and through. His Excellency Hazem M. Shabbat has been here on this table, seated where you are sitting right now, and affirmed that the Kenyan government has been supporting. So nonetheless, have you received any response from any of the government or any of the partners after writing to them?
we know from various governments that they're supporting us, and we are waiting to see what is happening on the 13th, 14th, and 15th
Have
of
they
October.
put that in writing?
As I told you, we have lots of official letters written.
Yes, so you've written letters, and you say they're supporting you, but have they replied? Have they responded to those letters that you've sent out, affirming their stance with your support?
They haven't written directly to us. What is interesting is not whether they reply to us. What is interesting, what they're doing on the 13th, 14th, and 15th.
Great. So it's a matter of wait and see, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
And
So
it's a matter of everybody to raise their voice and
Yes.
say, we do not want apartheid to come back to Africa.
Great. 16 years of existence of the BDS, right, and the larger BNC committee. This has been existence since the year 2005, and immediately you got at least 170 endorsements from national organizations, political organizations, welfare, trade unions, and all that within Palestine. In 2007, it extended to the peninsula. But again, it's still been regarded as an Arab issue. Is that the case, Madam Mantovani?
I guess the BDS movement actually shows that it's really not an Arab issue. And it's actually as well not a Muslim issue. As you said at the beginning, it's a human issue.
But again, the
because if we
structuring
look how the BDS movement grows, it first starts in Europe and to a certain extent in the US, and then goes down south in Latin America, in Asia, and in Africa. Evidently, we have long-standing boycott campaigns as well in the Arab world. But we need to see that on the one hand, we have the people of all creeds and colors that are standing up, and that BDS movement is, I think I'm so blessed to be part of it, because I haven't seen, since 16 years, a single week without a success. I guess that's hardly any movement can subscribe. And today we're seeing that on the one hand we have some Arab regimes that are going the opposite direction and are even normalizing with Israeli apartheid. But we have the people standing up across the globe, no matter what color, no matter what religion.
Before we delve more into that, you say at least this is a global movement, correct? How many member organizations beyond the Arab Peninsula, maybe? Rough figure, give or take.
We haven't counted that. It's millions and millions of people represented. If you're looking at the Indian farmers' unions, that in itself is already 13 million people, to the various trade unions, churches across the globe, and dozens of the denominations of Christian churches, to hundreds and thousands of academics and artists and sports people that have joined in. So I guess I can't really give you a number because it's too big.
Great, fair enough. It is common sense that at least people of certain commonalities, people that share some few things in common, whether religion, whether background, whether ethnicity, will always support each other and regard themselves as one, correct? Humanly, correct?
Yes.
That's why we have these blocks. We have the Asian Union, we have the Americans, we have the Africans, we have the Europeans, right? So, in this particular case, someone like you, respected, coming from Europe, a European country, standing with the Palestinians, and then seeing someone who is close to Palestine actually not doing as much as you are doing, but on the contrary, supporting the apartheid regime, either by putting diplomatic ties in place with them or business relations with them. How exactly does that make you feel, and how does it affect the BDS movement?
I guess it doesn't make me feel very much, because one can't be surprised. What is the struggle of the Palestinian people? And that is as well the slogan of the BDS movement is freedom, justice, and equality. And when you say people of a certain kind will stick together. Those people that cherish and work and thrive for freedom, justice, and equality stand together, no matter where they are. And those that are opposing it will stand together as well. So when you have regimes that are anti-democratic, that and political forces that are supremacist or that are racist, they come together. And I've always been saying, one just needs to look at the picture of global politics. If you go to Asia, India, Modi, the Hindutva supremacists in India, you move then over to certain states in the Arab world, and then go to Europe where you have Orban and the Islamophobic right in Europe. You go to the racist right in Bolsonaro in Brazil, and evidently Trump and its Trumpism. All these forces, anti-democratic, supremacist, exclusionary, see in Israel their ally, see in Israel their model, and want to get from Israel paradigms, technology, and methodology in order to fortify their own policies. So in that sense, we have a side that strives for freedom, justice, and equality, and another one that wants to maintain its privilege, its supremacy, and its colonial visions. So nothing strange, really.
Nothing strange that it doesn't affect the movement per se and the advocacy and the champion for end of apartheid?
I don't think so. I guess what really matters is where those governments that really believe in democracy and defending their people's interests will actually stand. And there it is interesting to look at the African continent and see what is the role of Israel in the African continent. Because I think we should a bit
delve much more into that.
Yeah.
Yes, because we're looking generally fast into the BDS, and then we're going to go into Israel and their relationship in Africa with the African countries. 16 years of existence again. I'm going to get back there. 16 years of existence. You say since you started, no single week without success. Would you mind sharing with us your success story? Like, what are the biggest success you've made as a movement first, before we delve with other follow-up questions on that?
I guess it's important to understand that we have victories and successes that are economic, very basic. One of the key examples is Veolia, the big French multinational corporation that after 7 years of campaigning from the BDS movement has lost over $6 billion in contracts not signed because they were building the apartheid railway, an illegal light rail in Jerusalem to colonize Jerusalem. After that, they decided that actually Palestinian human rights have a cost and got out of it. We have other examples of, for example, for us it's very important that the churches are joined in with divestments, divesting from the church, from companies. Even the fact that we got the United Nations to do a database of companies that highlights which are those companies that are actually supporting and profiting from Israel's illegal settlements, to cutting military ties. I'm thinking about the end of a big project for a microsatellite in Brazil that we were able to end, to as well less economic campaigns, like the fact that big artists like Roger Waters or others have very clearly said they're not going to play Sun City, Tel Aviv, Israel anymore. These are the kind of less tangible or monetary victories, but that are still important.
Great, because someone, a layman, would think This has been 16 years of struggle of apartheid. So in that case, then, if anything, what we should be expecting is that less and less atrocities against the people of Palestine. But again, I'm being informed that you need to go for a very short break to run some advertisements. But again, when we come back, one thing that you need to understand, my question that I was building up on, is that at least a layman would assume, or rather would wish, less atrocities against the people of Palestine since the BDS movement started. But again, if anything, we had one of the worst attacks in the land of Palestine this year, 2021. But again, this and much more after the break. Let's pay our bills and then we get back with more.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for keeping it live. Real Talk. My name is Faisal Kassim, and we have the honor to be graced in our studio today by Miss Maren Mantovani. Karibu sana.
Asante. Thank you.
Nice. Yeah, my brother Zahid, who's the host, is doing a good job by teaching her some bits of Swahili here and there. Back to our question before we went for a break. A layman would expect less atrocities from these divestments, from these boycotts, from these sanctions. We expect at least, if we take part in this or if we partake in this, then this regime, the apartheid regime, will not have resources to actually move. But again, we saw the recent annexation of the West Bank, and that was one of the deadliest during the holy month of Ramadan. People were massacred, mosque was invaded with boots and tear gassed. The worshippers, the congregation. It's actually one of the deadliest attacks on the Palestinian soil. Yet this has been in existence for the past 16 years. So a layman again would ask, is there a need to continue with this BDS movement, yet nothing is changing. As you're building up your question on that, on 30th of September, 3 different people on 3 different incidents were killed. A 22-year-old Ala Nasser Muhammad as a youth and was killed, and 2 others were injured. 30-year-old Isra Khuzaima, a mother of 3 again, was killed. 41-year-old Abu Ammar was shot severally. Later on succumbed to the injuries. On Sunday, 5 people more killed. In August, at least 16 Palestinians dead. And the numbers go on and on and on and on. So one would ask, why should we continue with this BDS movement? Is it really helping? Yet all this is happening at the same time.
Well, first of all, I think the names, the lives that have been lost over the last days only should be reason enough for us not to continue to have or accept ties of complicity with the state on a very basic ethical level. All of this is a reminder on why it is so fundamental to boycott, to divest, and to sanction, and not to support this system. So on its efficacy, I think it's important to look back at the South African apartheid regime and the boycott movement against it, and see a bit how the trajectory worked there. In 92, just before the end of apartheid, it was one of the darkest moments of the apartheid regime. And yet it was when the movement was about to win. I think it's important to see that the cruelty is dramatic, and we all wanted to stop now. It should have never started, it should have stopped long ago. But the more a system gets fragile, the more cruel it gets. And I think this is what we're really seeing. And one of the signs that it is getting fragile is, very interestingly, the reaction to what has happened this May. We've never seen so many people out in the streets across the globe. We have never seen such a reaction from all over the place, even within the United States Congress, within the Democratic Party of the United States. Yeah. There was opposition to the White House support to Israel at that moment. And even more interesting than the show of solidarity with the Palestinian people was the non-show of defense of Israel's actions. Hardly anybody dared to speak out in defense of Israel. We had New York Times with the show of the children killed during those days on the front page. We did not have a counter-reaction of somebody ready to still defend this apartheid regime. And I think that means that something very profoundly has made a click. It isn't good enough yet to end the bloodshed. It isn't good enough yet to end the daily stealing of land and confiscation of water resources and destruction of homes, but it goes the way.
So, by giving the analogy of South Africa, are you saying that it gets darkest before it's dawn?
Exactly.
And that's the same thing with Palestinian? So we should have hope?
We always have to have hope, because otherwise we're not changing anything. But I definitely think that we are at a moment where the system shows its unsustainability, which unfortunately is costing so much death and destruction for Palestinians.
Yes.
But it is as well when you see the BDS movement, there is this famous sentence as well: first they ignore you, then they laugh about you, then they fight you, and then you win. They've ignored us, they've laughed about us, they've fought us. Israel has built up an entire ministry to defend, to fight the BDS movement. A few months ago they've disbanded it, saying very clearly because it failed.
That's by the current Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett. Great. Benjamin Netanyahu was bad, was cruel. I mean, a number of things, atrocities happened under his watch. But again, now Naftali Bennett is likely to be worse because he was a soldier. He killed a number of Palestinians. He said it is on record. So he killed a number of Palestinians. And he thinks and he feels that it's all justified that they should be killed because he believes that is their land. Right?
And I would say in here that brings Palestinians together again with Africans. He is one of the most racist anti-African prime ministers, or the most racist anti-African prime minister that Israel has had, who very clearly on his first days in power has said that he wants to what he calls the infiltrators, i.e. African migrants, to expel them back home again.
So the question on this is that, is BDS an entirely economical, or are you looking into political, diplomatic ties? Are you looking into maybe probably negotiations or lobbying other governments and states in taking part of the struggle?
It is all of this. BDS is a whole toolkit that fundamentally says we need to end ties of complicity, whatever form that are. If that is economic, if that is military, if that is diplomatic, if that is cultural, if that is academic, with Israeli apartheid. Because an apartheid regime cannot stand alone. That is not sustainable. So it is a whole range of things from what each and every one of us can do in not buying certain products, like, for example, big campaign we're having is the campaign against Puma, the sports gear maker who is sponsoring the Israeli national football team, from efforts that we can do in our own spaces, in our own TV stations or other places that can declare themselves free of Israeli apartheid.
Great.
To the governmental level to ensure that governments are taking the right position.
Great. Bringing the point closer home, and Africa. Africa and Israel majorly dealing in military exchange in terms of expertise, equipment, weapons and all that. Agriculture, I mean, it's great between Africa as a continent and Israel as a country. Education and research is another key area that Africa and Israel have this bilateral kind of relationship. So for Africans to take part in this BDS movement, what exactly do we need to do? What exactly do I need to do? I cannot force my government to cut ties and kick out the Israelis from here, right? I cannot force that. I can just create a petition and maybe start a petition and maybe take it round. But again, the ultimate backstops to the government. But again, as a person, as a citizen, as a journalist or a media personality, what can I do? As that Mama Mboga basically the vendors, you know, the vegetable vendors. So that vegetable vendor, that fruit vendor, that newspaper vendor down there on the streets, how do they take part in this BDS movement? Beyond, over and above the sanction, the divestments, the boycotting of some of this product?
There are many ways you can join in. I've been talking about Puma. The other thing is for the next Ramadan, what kind of dates are you eating? Where do they come from? Are you buying fool and hummus from Baraka, Israel? Or are you finding another supplier for your produce? So there are many things we can do in our homes, but I do think there are many things that a journalist can do as well in highlighting highlighting the cause of Palestine, highlighting what the BDS movement is actually doing, and trying to shift that propaganda idea that Israel is coming to help Africa. Israel has never helped Africa. Israel is taking money from African governments to sell them weapons, to sell them repressive espionage surveillance material. Israel is making much more money out of that one than the tiny bit of agricultural or other corporation that are big in the media because the journalists take the PR statements of the Israeli embassy, but which are actually in numerical terms
Blowing things out of proportion, you mean?
absolutely. So you have really an important role to play.
So how do you tell that person or that fruit vendor who is expecting a scholarship from Israel that, you need to boycott Israel, or is getting maybe some medical aid, because that's another key area of partnership between these two countries?
I mean, first of all, how many fruit vendors in Kenya have
I'm just
already
saying.
gotten? No, I think that's interesting.
It's
How
an
many fruit
hypothetical.
vendors?
It's an hypothetical situation. Basically, there's someone from the lower cadre in life, right? From using the LSM pyramid scheme, the living standard measures, getting people who are at the bottom of the pyramid. The fruit vendors, the vegetable vendors, someone who's expecting a scholarship maybe from the Israeli government, or is expecting medical aid from the Israeli government. And some of these people from Israel, they're coming masquerading through faith-based organizations to help people there. So how do you tell this person, how do you best package your message to this person who is down here to boycott Israeli products?
I think the question already falls into a propaganda trap, in the sense that what Israel is doing is not helping the poor street vendors. Where it actually comes with the money and the support is up on the rich echelons, where it is buying up. Because the saying that the poor people are the ones that are bought up to support Israel, what I've experienced in the last 16 years from Latin America to Asia, across the globe, when people were poor, when people were downtrodden, when people were oppressed, they were the ones that were standing in solidarity. They were the ones that were standing in the protests and standing in the streets in support for the Palestinian cause. I'm not worried about the street vendors. I'm worried about those that are sitting with the big cars and that get the real money. So I believe in the power of the people and the fact that people know that justice is indivisible, and that if you accept that one person is oppressed or one people is oppressed, you accept that globally. Either we are all together or none of us is free and safe.
Wow, wow, great. Maren Mantovani, what a unique, amazing name, right? Yes, this has been the Love Real Talk, but again, I cannot wrap up this conversation, as I'm being ordered to wrap up the conversation without getting a parting shot from you, Miss Maren Mantovani. I mean, it has been an amazing discussion. I've been able to learn a lot as well tonight, so I cannot wrap up this conversation without getting a parting shot from you. Please, would you mind? What's your parting shot tonight?
I would end up with the statement that Nelson Mandela gave once, the liberation of South Africa, and I would say Africa is not complete until Palestine is free. And I never understood what it meant until I came here on the African continent, and I realized exactly what it meant, and it meant that if we allow colonialism or apartheid to continue anywhere, it will come back to haunt us. And if we see how Israel is entering today the African continent and African Union again, with its arms, with its weapons, with its destruction, then I fully understand what Nelson Mandela said, and I do hope that we can really free the African continent and the Palestinian people.
Wow, great. Amazing wise words from Ms. Maren Mantovani. And mine would be something similar. Have you heard of the story about the 3 black sheep and white one sheep? And they were neighboring a wolf. There was a wolf in the neighborhood. So these 3 black sheep with their other white sheep brother, every night when they go to sleep, because they're sleeping outside, so every night when they go to sleep, the 3 black sheep would cover the white sheep so that when the wolf comes at night hunting, it won't see the white sheep, right? So that happened for quite some time, until one evening, the 3 black sheep sat in a meeting and decided, you know what, it's too much. Covering up for this white sheep every other night, it's too much. Why can't we just let him be? And then we'll be sleeping freely, right? So that's happened. That happened that night. They decided to expose the white sheep. And the wolf came that night, saw the white sheep exposed, took the white sheep. So after testing the sheep, knowing the scent of the sheep and knowing the location of the sheep, so the following night, the wolf came again around the same area and got another black sheep. Nights passed, the sheep came again. There are how many sheep remaining? 2 now, right? The wolf came again, found 2 sheep sleeping, took the other sheep. How many sheep was remaining now?
1.
Only 1. So the day that this last sheep was being attacked, it said that I'm not dying today. I died the day I let the white sheep to be taken by the wolf. So today it's Palestine. Who knows about tomorrow? Let's not be in that situation where we're going to be the last black sheep, full of regrets, thinking that we would have done better back then. The time to do is now. Boycott, divest, sanction. Free Palestine. My name is Faisal, Kassim, and this has been the Live Real Talk. See you next week, same place, same time. And let's talk about something else that you want to listen to. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.